The bullet that grazed Samuel Vance's shoulder in a Hillsborough, Texas saloon on a humid August evening in 1878 was not what changed his life, though it certainly got his attention when the doctor dug it out while he gritted his teeth and tried not to pass out. What changed everything was the woman who walked through the door of Doc Morrison's office 3 hours later, her dark hair coming loose from its pins, her green eyes bright with worry, asking if anyone had seen her father who'd gone missing after the shooting broke out. Samuel had been lying on the examination table, shirt ruined and shoulder bandaged, when Olivia Earnest stepped into the lamplight. She was perhaps 22 or 23, he guessed, close to his own 26 years, and she carried herself with the kind of determined grace that spoke of someone who'd learned early that the world would not bend for her convenience. She wore a simple calico dress, faded from too many washings, and there was flour dusted on her right sleeve. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a worn shawl around her shoulders despite the heat. "Miss," Doc Morrison said gently, looking up from washing his instruments, "there were a few men who cleared out when the shooting started. What's your father look like?" "Tall, graying hair, wearing a brown vest," Olivia said quickly. "He went to collect payment from Mr. Henderson for the bread we delivered this morning. He should have been home 2 hours ago." Samuel sat up slowly, ignoring the sharp pain in his shoulder. "Henderson was one of the men shooting. Last I saw, he rode out heading west with 2 others. Your father wasn't with them, though. Might be he took shelter somewhere, waiting for things to calm down." Olivia's eyes fixed on him, taking in his bloodied shirt and pale face. "You were there." "Wrong place, wrong time," Samuel said. "I just come in for a drink." Didn't even know what they were fighting about before the lead started flying. "Thank you," she said softly, then turned back to the doctor. "I need to find him. My father has a weak heart. If he's frightened, if he's hiding somewhere." "You can't go out there alone," Samuel heard himself saying. He slid off the table, steadying himself against a wave of dizziness. "Give me a minute to get my bearings, I'll help you look." Doc Morrison protested, naturally, saying Samuel needed rest, but Samuel had already made up his mind. Something about the worry in Olivia's face, the way she held herself together despite obvious fear, made it impossible for him to stay put. He drifted into Hillsborough 2 weeks ago, just another cowboy looking for work after driving cattle up from San Antonio. He had no ties here, no reason to care about strangers' troubles, but he found himself caring anyway. They searched for 2 hours, checking every storefront, every alley, every boarding house. Olivia knew everyone, it seemed. She called out greetings even in her distress, asked careful questions, thanked people for their time. Samuel followed, his shoulder throbbing, learning more about her with each interaction. She and her father ran a bakery on the edge of town. They'd moved to Hillsborough 3 years ago from Tennessee after her mother died. She'd taught herself to bake from her grandmother's recipes, written in a book she carried in her apron pocket like a talisman. They finally found Thomas Earnest sitting in the back room of the general store, shaking and pale, clutching his chest. The store owner's wife had given him water and made him sit when he'd stumbled in, confused and struggling to breathe. Olivia rushed to him, dropping to her knees beside his chair. "Papa," she whispered, taking his hands. "Papa, I'm here." Thomas's eyes focused on her slowly. "Livy, the shooting, I couldn't remember where, couldn't think." "It's all right, you're safe now, we're going to get you home." Samuel helped Thomas to his feet, supporting most of the older man's weight. Thomas was perhaps 55, worn down by hard living and whatever troubled his heart. They made slow progress through the darkening streets to a small house behind the bakery. The smell of bread still lingered in the air, warm and yeasty. Inside, the home was modest but clean. Olivia settled her father in his bed, brought him water, spoke to him in low, soothing tones until his breathing steadied. Samuel waited in the main room, looking at the simple furnishings, the way everything was carefully maintained despite obvious poverty. There were books on a shelf, their spines cracked from reading. A quilt draped over the back of a worn sofa, its pattern intricate and beautiful. When Olivia emerged, she looked exhausted. "He's sleeping. Thank you for your help, Mr. Vance. Samuel Vance. Most people call me Sam, Mr. Vance then. I'm grateful. I don't know what I would have done if." She trailed off, wrapping her arms around herself. "He'll be all right," Samuel said, though he had no way of knowing if that was true. For now. Olivia moved to the kitchen, started making coffee with automatic movements. "His heart grows weaker. The doctor says it could be years or it could be months. There's no way to know." "That's a hard burden to carry." "It's not a burden. He's my father." But her voice cracked slightly on the words. Samuel accepted the coffee she offered, bitter and strong. They sat at her small kitchen table as full darkness fell outside. He should have left. His shoulder ached. He was light-headed from blood loss, and he barely knew these people. But something kept him there, listening as Olivia talked about her father's condition, about the bakery that barely made enough to keep them fed, about the loneliness of this life she'd built in Texas. "I'm sorry," she said finally, laughing a little. "You've been shot and spent your evening searching for a stranger. You don't need to hear about my troubles." "I don't mind," Samuel said, and meant it. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something passed between them in the lamplight. Not attraction, not yet, but recognition. The acknowledgement of two people who understood something about loneliness, about making your way in a hard world. "Where are you staying?" she asked. "Boarding house on Main Street, room by the week." "And what brought you to Hillsboro?" "Work, mostly. Heard they were hiring hands at the ranches north of here. Figured I'd try my luck." "You're a cowboy, then?" "Among other things." "I've worked cattle, broken horses, done some carpentry when ranch work was scarce. I go where the work is." Olivia nodded slowly. "A drifter's life." "I suppose so." Samuel set down his empty cup. "Though drifting gets old after a while. Been thinking lately it might be nice to stay somewhere for more than a season. Hillsboro's not a bad place for that. We have good people here mostly. Tonight's excitement notwithstanding." Samuel smiled despite himself. "Excitement's one word for getting shot. How's your shoulder?" "Been better. Been worse too. You should get back and rest. I've kept you too long." But neither of them moved. The night pressed against the windows, crickets singing their endless song. The coffee grew cold in their cups. And Samuel found himself thinking about the way lamplight caught in Olivia's dark hair, the careful strength in her work-worn hands. Finally, he stood. "If you need anything, if your father takes a turn, or if you need help with something, I'm at Mrs. Cooper's boarding house." "Thank you, Mr. Vance. That's kind, Sam," he said. "Please." "Sam." She tested the name, seemed to find it acceptable. "And I'm Olivia, though my friends call me Livy." "Livy," he repeated, liking the sound of it. She walked him to the door. Before he left, she pressed something into his hand, a small wrapped package, still warm. "Bread," she explained. "From this morning's baking, it's the least I can do." Samuel made his way back through the quiet streets, his shoulder aching with each step, the bread tucked carefully under his good arm. When he reached his room, he unwrapped it and found a perfect loaf, golden and fragrant. He tore off a piece and tasted it. It was the best bread he'd ever eaten, made with skill and care by hands that knew their craft. He lay awake that night, thinking about green eyes and flour-dusted sleeves, about a woman trying to hold her small world together through sheer determination. He thought about the way she'd knelt beside her father, the tenderness in her voice. He thought about loneliness and staying put, and what it might mean to build something instead of just drifting from one place to the next. The next morning, despite the doctor's orders to rest, Samuel went looking for work. He found it at the Miller Ranch, 10 miles north of town. They needed a hand who could work with horses, and Samuel had always been good with animals. The pay was decent, the work honest. He started immediately, spending long days in the sun, gentling half-wild mustangs, mending fences, doing whatever was needed. But each evening he rode back to Hillsborough. He told himself it was because the boarding house was more comfortable than the bunkhouse, because he preferred his own space. He didn't admit, even to himself, that it was because of a certain bakery on the edge of town. He started stopping by just to check on Thomas. That's what he told himself. He'd bring things he thought might help. A book he'd finished reading, a bottle of decent whiskey for the pain, information about a doctor in Dallas who supposedly worked wonders with heart conditions. Olivia always received him graciously, offering coffee, sometimes a slice of pie or a roll fresh from the oven. They talked. That was the surprising thing. Samuel had never been much of a talker, but with Olivia, conversation came easy. She had opinions about everything, from politics to philosophy to the best way to proof bread dough. She was educated, he learned, had gone to a small college in Tennessee before her mother's death brought her home. She read voraciously, borrowed books from anyone who'd lend them, discussed ideas with an enthusiasm that made her eyes bright. Thomas grew to expect Samuel's visits, even seemed to look forward to them. The older man was sharp when his health allowed it, full of stories about Tennessee, about his own father who'd been a printer and had filled their home with books and ideas. On good days, Thomas would sit on the small porch behind their house, enjoying the evening air, while Samuel and Olivia talked over coffee. It was on one of those evenings, watching Thomas doze in his chair, that Samuel had the idea. The porch was small, barely big enough for two people to stand on. There were steps leading down to a small yard where Olivia kept a vegetable garden, worked carefully into the hardscrabble Texas soil. The house itself was weathered, in need of repairs they couldn't afford. "This place could use some fixing up," Samuel said carefully. Olivia followed his gaze, seeing what he saw: peeling paint, sagging boards, a roof that probably leaked when the rains came hard. "I know, but there's never enough money after buying flour and sugar, paying the rent. I do what I can. What if I helped? I'm handy with a hammer. I could shore up that porch, fix the worst of it. Wouldn't charge anything, just do it in my spare time." She looked at him suspiciously. "Why would you do that?" "Because you've been feeding me every time I come by. Figure I owe you a few hours of work. The food's nothing, just scraps." "Best scraps I've ever eaten." Samuel leaned against the porch railing, felt it shift under his weight. "This thing's going to give way one day. Let me fix it before someone gets hurt." Olivia was quiet for a long moment. "You've already done too much. You barely know us." "Maybe I'd like to know you better." The words hung between them. Olivia's cheeks colored slightly, but she didn't look away. "I can't pay you. Don't want payment. Then I don't understand." Samuel struggled to find words for something he barely understood himself. "You ever feel like you're waiting for something, but you don't know what it is? Like you're just moving from one day to the next, not really living, just existing?" "Yes," Olivia said softly. "Every day. Well, maybe I'm tired of waiting. Maybe I want to build something, see it take shape under my hands. Start with a porch, see where it goes from there. And if it doesn't go anywhere, then I've fixed a porch. That's something." Olivia smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her. It transformed her face, made her beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with features and everything to do with the warmth that suddenly shone through. "All right, but I insist on feeding you properly. Real meals, not scraps. So it began. Samuel started coming by after work, still dusty from the ranch, tools borrowed from the miller's barn. He tore out the rotting boards of the porch, replaced them with fresh lumber he bought with his own wages. He reinforced the foundation, straightened the railings, sanded everything smooth. Olivia watched from the doorway at first, then started coming out to help, handing him nails, holding boards steady while he cut them to length. They worked side by side as the September heat gave way to October cool. Thomas watched from inside, his health keeping him confined more days than not, but he seemed pleased by the activity, by the sound of hammering and sawing and Olivia's occasional laughter. "You're good at this," Olivia said one evening, running her hand over the smooth new railing. "My father was a carpenter. Before he died, he taught me some. Always wished I'd learned more." "How old were you?" 14. "He got kicked by a horse, died 3 days later. My mother followed him 6 months after that. Just stopped eating, stopped talking, stopped wanting to live. I've been on my own since. I'm sorry. Long time ago now." But saying it out loud brought the familiar ache, the old loneliness he'd carried for 12 years. "At least I had 14 years with him. Some people don't even get that." Olivia's hand found his on the railing, squeezed gently. "No, they don't." They stood there in the fading light, hands touching, not quite holding. It was the first time they'd touched beyond accidental brushes, passing tools back and forth. Samuel's heart hammered in his chest, loud enough he was sure she must hear it. "The porch looks wonderful," Olivia said finally, not moving her hand. "You've done more than I ever expected. I'm not finished yet." The idea had been growing in Samuel's mind for days, taking shape like the porch itself. "I want to build you a swing, right there at the corner. A proper one with a good strong chain, big enough for 2 people. Somewhere you and your father can sit on nice evenings." Olivia did pull her hand back then. "Sam, you've already done too much. Let me do this, please." "Why?" "Because I'm falling in love with you," Samuel thought. "Because every evening I spend here feels more like home than anywhere I've been in 12 years. Because when I think about the future now, I see you in it." But he couldn't say any of that. It was too soon, too much, too frightening to put into words. So instead he said, "Because everyone deserves a place to sit and watch the sunset. Because you work too hard and worry too much and you need somewhere to rest. Because I want to." Olivia's eyes were bright, possibly with tears. A swing would be lovely. Samuel bought the best lumber he could afford, seasoned oak that would last for years. He worked late into the evenings, measuring twice, cutting once, sanding until his hands were raw. He crafted a bench seat big enough for 2, with a curved back for comfort, armrests on either side. He bought proper chain from the hardware store, the good heavy kind that wouldn't rust or break. He mounted it carefully in the porch corner where it would catch the evening breeze, where you could sit and see out over the small yard and the prairie beyond. The night he finished, he didn't tell Olivia. He just hung it, tested it with his own weight, pushed it gently to make sure the motion was smooth. It was perfect, better than he'd hoped. He stood back, looking at it in the moonlight, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Pride, yes, but more than that. Hope. He went home that night and lay awake, imagining Olivia's face when she saw it. Imagining, perhaps, sitting beside her on that swing, their shoulders touching, watching the sun go down. It was a foolish hope, he knew. She'd given him no real indication she thought of him as more than a friend, a kind soul who'd helped her in a difficult time. But hope, once kindled, is hard to extinguish. Olivia discovered the swing at dawn when she came out to start the fire in the bakery. Samuel heard about it from Mrs. Cooper at breakfast, who'd heard it from Mrs. Chen, who ran the general store, who'd heard it from her husband, who delivered flour to the bakery that morning. That Ernest girl was crying, Mrs. Cooper reported, slathering butter on her biscuit. Happy tears, Chen said. Someone built her a beautiful swing on her porch. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you, Mr. Vance? Samuel kept his expression neutral. Might have. Mrs. Cooper fixed him with a knowing look. She was 60 if she was a day, had run the boarding house for 30 years, and very little escaped her notice. She's a good girl, had a hard time of it with her father so sick, could use someone looking after her for a change. I just built a swing, madam. Hum. And I'm just making breakfast. But she smiled as she said it. Samuel stayed away that day, giving Olivia space to enjoy the swing without him hovering around. But when he rode back from the ranch the next evening, he found himself drawn to the bakery despite his intentions to keep his distance. Olivia was sitting on the swing, still wearing her work dress covered in flour, her hair escaping its pins in the way it always did by day's end. She was gently pushing herself back and forth, her eyes closed, a small smile on her face. She looked peaceful in a way he'd never seen her. He must have made some sound because her eyes opened and found him standing at the edge of the yard. Sam, she said, and his name on her lips sounded like something precious. Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you. You're not. Come here. He climbed the new porch steps, admiring his own handiwork despite himself. The swing creaked gently as Olivia shifted her weight. It's perfect, she said. How did you know this was exactly what I needed? Lucky guess. No, she patted the seat beside her. Sit with me. Samuel's heart did something complicated in his chest. This was what he'd imagined, what he'd hoped for when he built it. But now, faced with the reality, he was terrified. He sat anyway, careful to leave space between them, though the swing wasn't wide enough for much distance. They swayed together in the evening air. From here, you could see the last light touching the prairie grass, turning it gold and amber. Smoke rose from chimneys in town. Someone was playing a fiddle somewhere, the music drifting on the breeze. Papa loves it, Olivia said. He sat out here for an hour this afternoon, just swinging and smiling. He hasn't looked that peaceful in months. Good, that's good. Why did you really do this, Sam? And don't say it was because you felt you owed me. We both know that's not true. Samuel struggled with his words, with the truth that wanted to spill out. Maybe I was hoping someday you'd sit beside me on it. Like this. Olivia turned to look at him. They were close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes, the dusting of flour she'd missed on her jawline. I'm sitting here now. Yeah, you are. Is this what you imagined? Better. The word came out rough. It's better than I imagined. Olivia's hand found his again, but this time she didn't just squeeze and let go. She held on, her fingers intertwining with his. I need to tell you something. Samuel's breath caught. All right. I've been in love twice before. Once when I was 17, a boy back in Tennessee. He married someone else. The second time was just before Mama died, a teacher at the college. He wanted me to move to Memphis with him, leave my family. When I said no, he left anyway. She paused, looking down at their joined hands. I thought I was done with all that. Thought I'd spend my life taking care of Papa, running the bakery, and that would be enough. It had to be enough. Livy, let me finish. She gripped his hand tighter. Then you came along. This cowboy who got shot and still helped me search for my father. Who kept coming back day after day, for no reason I could understand. Who saw that our porch was falling apart and fixed it without being asked. Who built me a swing because he thought I needed a place to rest. Her voice broke slightly. How am I supposed to guard my heart against something like that? Samuel turned toward her, his free hand coming up to cup her face. Maybe you're not supposed to guard it. Maybe you're supposed to give it to someone who'll take care of it. And you think you're that someone? I know I want to be. I know that every day I wake up thinking about seeing you. I know that when I'm at the ranch, I'm counting hours until I can ride back to town. I know that I've been drifting for 12 years, and for the first time I want to stay somewhere, want to build something that lasts." He brushed his thumb across her cheekbone. "I know that I'm in love with you, Livy. Have been since the night I met you, probably. Just took me a while to admit it." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm scared. So am I. Papa's sick. He needs me. I can't just—" "I'm not asking you to choose. I'm asking to be part of your life, to help you carry what you're carrying, to sit beside you on this swing and watch the sunset. To be here for as long as you'll have me. That's all. That's everything." Olivia leaned forward, closing the small distance between them, and kissed him. It was soft and tentative at first, a question more than a statement. Samuel answered by pulling her closer, deepening the kiss, pouring 12 years of loneliness and longing into it. The swing rocked beneath them, the chains creaking softly, and somewhere in town, the fiddle played on. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Olivia laughed through her tears. "I love you too, in case that wasn't clear." "It was pretty clear," Samuel said, grinning like a fool, "but I wouldn't mind hearing it again. I love you, Sam Vance. I love your kindness and your skilled hands and the way you see what needs doing and just do it. I love that you built me a swing, hoping I'd sit beside you. I love that you're here, that you stayed, that you want to keep staying." They kissed again, longer this time, and Samuel felt something settle in his chest that had been restless his entire adult life. This was home. Not a place, but a person. This woman with flour in her hair and calluses on her hands and a heart big enough to hold all her worry and fear and still have room for love. They heard Thomas cough inside, and Olivia pulled away reluctantly. "I should check on him. Make sure he's taken his medicine." "I know." But she didn't move immediately. "Will you stay for dinner if you want me to?" "I always want you to, that's the problem." "Doesn't sound like a problem to me." Olivia kissed him once more, quick and sweet, then went inside. Samuel stayed on the swing, pushing himself gently back and forth, watching the last light fade from the sky. He felt dazed, drunk on happiness, barely able to believe what had just happened. Dinner was simple but good: stew and bread, coffee, and dried apple pie. Thomas ate with them, his appetite better than it had been in weeks. He watched Samuel and Olivia with knowing eyes, seeing their exchanged glances, the way they found excuses to touch hands across the table. "You planning to marry my daughter?" Thomas asked bluntly as Olivia cleared the plates. "Papa," Olivia's face flushed crimson, but Samuel met the older man's gaze steadily. "Yes, sir, if she'll have me. Though I figured I'd court her properly first, ask your permission when the time was right." "Permission granted." Thomas leaned back in his chair, smiling. "Time was right the day you helped us find each other in town. Everything since has just been you two figuring out what I already knew." "And what's that?" Olivia asked, standing behind her father's chair, her hands on his shoulders. "That you belong together. That this young man's got a good heart and strong hands, and he loves you enough to build you a swing just so you'd have a place to rest. That's the kind of man you marry, Livy. The kind who builds things, not tears them down." Later, after Thomas had gone to bed, Samuel and Olivia returned to the swing. The November air was cool now, hinting at the winter to come. Olivia leaned against Samuel's shoulder, his arm around her, and they rocked slowly in the darkness. "When you said you'd court me properly," Olivia said, "what does that mean?" "I don't know exactly. I've never courted anyone before," Samuel admitted. "I thought maybe I could take you to dinner, or we could go for walks. Whatever people do when they're trying to convince someone to spend the rest of their life with them. You don't need to convince me. I'm already convinced. Still, you deserve it. Deserve to be courted and wooed and made to feel special. I feel special right now." Then imagine how you'll feel after I really put some effort in." Olivia laughed, the sound warm in the darkness. "All right, cowboy, court me, woo me, make me fall even more in love with you than I already am." "That's a tall order. Think you can handle it?" Samuel kissed the top of her head. "I'll certainly try." The courting period that followed was perhaps unconventional by most standards. Samuel still worked at the Miller Ranch during the day, still spent his evenings at the bakery. But now, when he arrived, Olivia would wash the flour from her hands and they'd walk through town together, her hand in his, stopping to talk with neighbors, to watch the sunset from the small hill north of Hillsborough, to simply be together. On Sundays, the bakery was closed. Samuel would arrive after church, and they'd take Thomas out in the wagon Samuel borrowed from the ranch. They'd drive into the prairie, spread a blanket, eat the lunch Olivia had packed. Thomas would doze in the wagon bed while Samuel and Olivia talked for hours, learning each other's histories, sharing dreams for the future. Samuel told her about his parents, about growing up in Oklahoma, about the years of drifting that had brought him to Texas. He talked about the loneliness that had become so familiar he'd almost stopped noticing it, until she'd made him feel its absence. Olivia told him about her mother's long illness, the slow fading that had taken 2 years and left them broken and poor. About coming to Texas hoping for a fresh start, only to discover her father's heart was failing too. About the fear that she'd spend her life watching everyone she loved slip away. "I won't slip away," Samuel promised. "I'm staying right here." "You can't promise that. People die, Sam. Accidents happen." "Then I promise I'll stay as long as I can, that I'll build us a life that lasts, that I'll love you every day I have." He pulled her close. "That's all anyone can promise, Livy, but I mean it with everything I am." November became December. The Texas winter was mild compared to what Samuel had known in Oklahoma, but cold enough. He spent his limited free time winterizing the house, sealing gaps in the walls, checking the roof, making sure the stove was working properly. Thomas's health deteriorated with the cold, confining him to bed more often than not. Doc Morrison came by regularly, shaking his head with increasing concern. "His heart's failing," he told Olivia and Samuel quietly one evening. "I can make him comfortable, but that's about all. Could be days, could be months. I'm sorry." Olivia took the news with the stoic grace Samuel had come to associate with her. She thanked the doctor, paid him from her meager savings, then went to sit with her father. Samuel found her there an hour later, holding Thomas's hand while the older man slept, tears running silently down her face. He knelt beside her chair, taking her free hand. "Come here. I need to stay with him. Just for a minute, he's sleeping." Reluctantly, Olivia let Samuel lead her outside to the porch, to the swing that had started everything. The night air was crisp, stars brilliant overhead. He wrapped her in his coat, held her while she cried properly, deep shaking sobs that seemed to come from her soul. "I'm not ready," she gasped between tears. "I know I've known this was coming, but I'm not ready to lose him. I don't think we're ever ready. What will I do without him? You'll keep living, keep baking, keep being the strong, beautiful, remarkable woman you are." Samuel held her tighter. "And you won't do it alone. I'll be here. You promise?" "I promise." They sat there until Olivia's tears subsided, until she was calm enough to go back inside. Samuel stayed that night, sleeping in a chair by the fire, wanting to be close in case she needed him. He woke several times to find Olivia sitting with her father, speaking softly, reading to him from the Bible or one of his favorite books. As it turned out, Thomas Earnest had months, not days. He rallied with the new year, regained some strength, was able to sit on the porch again when the January days were warm enough. Samuel had never been so grateful for a Texas winter in his life. On one such day, with Thomas dozing in the sun and Olivia needing bread inside, Samuel went to speak with the older man. "Sir, I know this might not be the best time, but I wanted to ask you something." Thomas opened one eye. "You want to marry her?" "Yes, sir." "Already told you that was fine by me." "I know, but that was when it was theoretical. Now I'm saying I want to ask her soon, maybe even today if I can work up the courage, and I wanted your blessing proper-like." Thomas struggled to sit up straighter. Samuel helped him, propping pillows behind his back. "You love her more than anything. You'll take care of her after I'm gone. I'll spend every day of my life making sure she's happy and safe and loved. You got prospects, way to support a wife." Samuel had been thinking about this. "The Miller Ranch offered me a permanent position. Good pay, steady work. I've been saving money since I got to Hillsborough. Not much yet, but it's a start. I thought we could stay here in this house if the landlord agrees. Keep the bakery running. I'd help however I could, nights and mornings before work." Thomas nodded slowly. "You've thought this through?" "Yes, sir." "Then you have my blessing. Had it months ago, truth be told. You're a good man, Samuel Vance. Exactly the kind of man I'd hoped would find my Livy someday." "Thank you, sir. That means more than I can say. One thing, though, anything, make her happy, that's all I want. Make her smile the way she's been smiling these past months. Give her a life full of joy, not just duty. She's had enough duty for 3 lifetimes. I will, I swear it." Thomas reached out a shaking hand and Samuel clasped it. "Good. Now help me back to bed before Livy comes out and fusses at both of us for overtiring me." But Samuel didn't ask Olivia that day, or the next. He carried his grandmother's ring in his pocket, having retrieved it from the boarding house where it had sat unused for years. He looked for the perfect moment, the right words, the ideal setting. Nothing seemed good enough for what he wanted to say. Finally, on a February evening with spring just beginning to hint at its arrival, he stopped overthinking and just did it. They were on the swing, as they were most evenings now, watching the sunset paint the prairie in shades of rose and gold. Thomas was inside, feeling well enough to read by himself for a while. "Livy," Samuel said, his heart hammering, "I need to tell you something. That sounds serious. It is, or at least it's important." He turned to face her, taking both her hands. "I've been carrying something around for weeks now, trying to figure out the right time, the right way. Then I realized there is no perfect time. There's just now and you and what I feel." Olivia's eyes widened, understanding dawning. "Sam, let me say this before I lose my nerve." He took a deep breath. "I love you. I've loved you since the night I met you, standing in Doc Morrison's office with flour on your sleeve and worry in your eyes. You've made me want things I'd given up on. A home, a family, a future. You've made me believe I could be more than just a drifter, that I could build something lasting and good." He fumbled in his pocket, pulled out the ring. "This was my grandmother's. It's not much, just a simple gold band, but it's all I have to offer besides my heart and my hands and every day of my life. Olivia Earnest, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks, but she was smiling. "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." Samuel slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been made for her. Then he kissed her, deep and long and full of promise, while the swing rocked beneath them and the sun set on another day. They were married in March, in the small church at the center of Hillsborough. The whole town turned out, it seemed. Mrs. Cooper wept through the entire ceremony. Doc Morrison gave Olivia away, since Thomas was too weak to walk her down the aisle, though he sat in the front row, beaming with pride despite his pallor. The Miller family came, along with half the hands from the ranch. Olivia wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit, simple white linen that made her look ethereal in the church's light. Samuel wore his best suit, newly purchased for the occasion, and tried not to shake as he spoke his vows. "I promise to love you in sickness and in health, in poverty and wealth, in joy and sorrow. I promise to build us a life worthy of the love we share. I promise to sit beside you on that swing when we're old and gray, and remember this day when everything began." Olivia's vows were simple but heartfelt. "I promise to love you all my days, to trust in the life we're building together, to choose you every day no matter what comes. You've given me hope when I thought I had none left. Now I give you my heart, my life, my future, all of it freely and forever." They sealed their promises with a kiss, and the church erupted in applause. Outside, people threw rice and called out blessings. Someone produced a fiddle and there was dancing in the street, impromptu and joyful. Samuel had never been much for dancing, but he twirled Olivia around anyway, her laughter bright in the spring air. That night, after the celebrating ended and the well-wishers finally went home, Samuel carried Olivia over the threshold of the house that was now truly theirs. Thomas had insisted, had even managed to stay awake long enough to see them wed. Now he was sleeping, Doc Morrison sitting with him to give the newlyweds privacy. In the small bedroom that had been Olivia's, Samuel and Olivia came together for the first time as husband and wife. It was tender and awkward and perfect, full of whispered words and gentle touches and the slow discovery of each other. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Olivia's head on Samuel's chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For building that swing, for hoping I'd sit beside you, for making those hopes come true." Samuel kissed her forehead. "Best thing I ever built, the swing. No, this life we're making together." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other, and Samuel dreamed of the future for the first time in years. He dreamed of children playing in the yard, of gray hair and wrinkled hands still holding tight, of a life full of ordinary moments made extraordinary by love. Thomas Earnest died 3 weeks later, peacefully in his sleep. He'd held on long enough to see his daughter married, to know she wouldn't be alone. It was, Samuel thought, the final gift of a man who'd spent his life giving to the daughter he loved. They buried him in the Hillsborough Cemetery on a hill overlooking the prairie. Olivia spoke at the service, her voice strong despite her tears, talking about a man who'd loved books and ideas, who'd taught her to think for herself, who'd never let poverty or hardship steal his kindness. Samuel stood beside her, his arm around her waist, lending her his strength. The grief was hard, but they weathered it together. Olivia threw herself into the bakery, baking until her hands ached, finding comfort in the familiar rhythms. Samuel worked at the ranch during the day and came home to help in the evenings, learning to knead dough and shape loaves, his carpenter's hands adapting to this new craft. Some nights, Olivia would wake crying, missing her father, missing her mother, feeling the weight of being orphaned at 23. Samuel would hold her, let her cry, whisper reassurances in the dark. Other nights, she was fine, able to remember the good times without falling apart, able to smile at memories instead of drowning in them. Slowly, spring turned to summer. The bakery thrived under their joint effort. Samuel's steady presence and Olivia's baking skills proved a good combination. They paid off Thomas's debts, bought the house from the landlord, made it truly theirs. Samuel built an addition to the bakery, creating more workspace, improving the ovens, and every evening, unless it was raining or too cold, they sat together on the swing. It became their time, sacred and separate from the rest of the day. They'd talk about everything and nothing, plan for the future, simply exist side by side. Samuel would push them gently with his foot, and they'd rock in the gathering darkness, watching stars emerge one by one. It was on the swing in August, a year after they'd met, that Olivia told him she was pregnant. "Are you sure?" Samuel asked, his hand moving instinctively to her still flat stomach. "As sure as I can be. I've missed my monthly courses twice now. I'm tired all the time. And the smell of raw meat makes me ill." She covered his hand with hers. "We're going to have a baby, Sam." Samuel felt something explode in his chest, a joy so profound it was almost painful. "A baby. We're going to be parents. Are you happy?" "Happy doesn't cover it." "I'm terrified and thrilled and so in love with you I can barely breathe." He kissed her deep and long. "When?" "February, I think, maybe March, a winter baby, probably." Olivia leaned against him. "Papa would have been so happy. He knew, I think, before he died. He told me to make sure we filled this house with life and laughter. Said it had been too quiet for too long. Then that's what we'll do." The pregnancy was hard at first. Olivia was sick most mornings, exhausted all the time. Samuel took over more of the baking, rising before dawn to start the ovens, kneading dough while Olivia rested. Doc Morrison checked on her regularly, pronounced everything normal despite her misery. But as the months passed and her belly grew round, Olivia bloomed. Her skin glowed, her eyes sparkled. She'd rest her hands on her stomach, feeling the baby move, smiling at sensations only she could feel. Samuel would press his hand there too, awed when he felt a kick or a roll, unable to believe he'd helped create this miracle. They made plans, preparing for the arrival. Samuel built a cradle from oak, carved with careful designs. They transformed the small room that had been Thomas's into a nursery. Olivia sewed tiny clothes, knitted small blankets, prepared in all the ways expectant mothers do. "What should we name the baby?" Olivia asked one evening on the swing, wrapped in Samuel's coat against the December chill. "I don't know. What do you like? If it's a girl, I'd like to name her Rose. That was my mother's name. Rose is beautiful. And if it's a boy—" Samuel thought about it. "What about Thomas? For your father?" Olivia's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Thomas Samuel Vance, I like that. Then that's what we'll call him if it's a boy. And if it's a girl, Rose Olivia Vance." They sat together, imagining their child, this person they'd made together who would carry pieces of them both into the future. Samuel thought about everything that had led him here, all the wandering and loneliness and searching. It had all been leading to this. To Olivia, to their child, to this life they were building together. The baby came on a cold February night, 3 weeks earlier than expected. Samuel rode through the darkness to fetch Doc Morrison, then paced the small house while Olivia labored. Mrs. Cooper had come to help, along with 2 other women from town, but they wouldn't let Samuel in the room. "First-time fathers just get in the way," Mrs. Cooper said firmly, shooing him out. "Wait here. We'll call you when it's time." So Samuel waited, listening to Olivia's cries, helpless and terrified. It seemed to go on forever, hours stretching into eternity. He prayed, though he wasn't much for praying, bargaining with God for Olivia's safety, for the baby's health, offering anything if they'd both be all right. Finally, as dawn broke pink and gold across the prairie, he heard it, the thin, angry wail of a newborn. Samuel's knees went weak with relief. Mrs. Cooper emerged beaming. "You have a son, Mr. Vance, healthy and strong with good lungs, and your wife is fine, tired but fine. Give us a few minutes to clean them up, then you can come in." Those few minutes felt longer than the entire night, but finally the door opened again, and Samuel was allowed into the bedroom. Olivia lay propped against pillows, pale and exhausted but radiantly beautiful. In her arms, wrapped in a soft blanket, was a tiny red-faced baby with dark hair and eyes squeezed shut against the light. "Sam," Olivia said softly, "meet your son, Thomas Samuel Vance." Samuel approached slowly, reverently, hardly daring to breathe. He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, looking down at this impossibly small person. "He's perfect. He has your nose. Poor kid." Olivia laughed, the sound tired but full of joy. "Don't talk about your son like that. I love your nose. Can I hold him?" "Of course." Olivia transferred the baby carefully into Samuel's arms. He was lighter than Samuel expected, delicate in a way that was terrifying. But he fit perfectly in the crook of Samuel's elbow, like he'd been made to be there. As Samuel held him, the baby opened his eyes, unfocused but searching, and Samuel felt his heart break wide open. "Hello, Thomas," he whispered. "I'm your father. I'm going to take care of you and your mama, going to teach you everything I know, going to love you every single day of your life." "That's a promise." The baby made a small sound, and Samuel knew he would die for this child, kill for him, do anything to keep him safe. He understood in that moment the depth of his own father's love, the loss his death must have been. He understood Thomas Earnest's fierce protectiveness of Olivia. He understood everything in a way he never had before. "Thank you," he said to Olivia, tears running down his face. "Thank you for him, for this, for everything." "Thank you for building that swing," Olivia replied, reaching up to touch his face. "Thank you for hoping I'd sit beside you." Samuel leaned down, careful of the baby between them, and kissed his wife. They stayed like that for a long moment, the three of them together, a family. Outside, the sun rose fully, spilling light across the prairie, across Hillsborough, across the small house where their new life was beginning. The next months passed in a blur of sleepless nights and tiny milestones. Thomas was a good baby, healthy and growing fast. Samuel learned to change diapers, to warm bottles when Olivia needed rest, to walk the floor at 2 in the morning singing off-key lullabies. The bakery suffered a bit, but their customers understood, brought meals and baby clothes, celebrated this new life among them. When spring came and Thomas was old enough to be outside, Samuel carried him out to the porch swing. He sat down carefully, the baby secure in his arms, and pushed them gently into motion. "This is where it all started," he told his son, who watched him with solemn eyes. "This is where your mama first told me she loved me, where I asked her to marry me, where we've spent 1,000 evenings talking and dreaming and planning for you." Thomas made a small cooing sound, and Samuel's heart swelled. "Someday you'll understand. Someday, when you find someone to love, you'll know why I built this swing, why I hoped your mama would sit beside me, why every moment since has been worth it." The door opened, and Olivia emerged, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She'd regained her strength, her curves, her vibrancy. She looked tired, as all new mothers do, but happy. "Room for one more?" she asked. Samuel shifted the baby, made space. Olivia settled beside him, leaning her head on his shoulder. They sat together, their son between them, rocking gently in the spring air. This was Samuel's favorite thing, this quiet time with his small family, this peace he'd built with his own hands. "I want more of these," Olivia said softly. "More babies, more of this. More moments of just being together, more swinging on the porch, more watching sunsets, more life with you." She turned to look at him. "More of everything. Then that's what we'll have. I promise you." And Samuel kept that promise. Over the next 10 years, their family grew. A daughter came next, rose Olivia as they'd planned, with her mother's dark hair and her father's determined chin. Then another son, James, round-faced and cheerful. Then twin girls, Emma and Alina, who looked nothing alike but were inseparable from birth. The house grew too, additions built by Samuel's skilled hands. The bakery thrived, became known throughout the county for its bread and pies. Samuel eventually left the Miller Ranch to work the bakery full-time, his carpentry skills put to use building a larger building, better ovens, a proper storefront. They prospered, not wealthy but comfortable, able to give their children opportunities Samuel had never had. All 5 children learned to read and write, attended the school that opened in Hillsborough. They learned their father's carpentry and their mother's baking. They learned, more importantly, about love and commitment and building lives that mattered. Through it all, the swing remained. Samuel maintained it carefully, replacing chains when they wore, sanding and refinishing the wood every few years. It held baby Thomas, then Rose, then each child in turn. It held Samuel and Olivia through sick children and hard winters and the 1,000 small struggles of life. It held their dreams, their fears, their constant love. The children grew. Thomas, serious and thoughtful, took over the bakery when he was 20, freeing Samuel and Olivia to step back a bit. Rose married a teacher and moved to Dallas, writing long letters home. James became a carpenter like his father, carrying on the skills Samuel had learned from his own father decades ago. Emma became a teacher in Hillsborough, while Alina married young and started her own family. Samuel and Olivia grew older together, their hair graying, their faces lining, their bodies slowing. But they still sat on the swing most evenings, still held hands, still talked about everything and nothing. Samuel's hands, gnarled now with arthritis, could still push them into gentle motion. Olivia's voice, though softer, could still make him laugh. "You remember the night I proposed?" Samuel asked one summer evening. They were both in their late 50s now, grandchildren playing in the yard, the sounds of family dinner drifting from inside where Thomas and his wife were cooking. "Of course, you were so nervous you could barely get the words out. I was terrified you'd say no. I was terrified you'd never ask." Olivia squeezed his hand. "Best decision I ever made, saying yes to you. Second best. Oh, what was the first?" "Sitting beside me on this swing the first time. That's when I knew we had a chance. That maybe my hoping wasn't foolish after all." Olivia leaned against him, fitting into his side the way she had for 30 years. "Your hoping was never foolish. It was brave. You built something beautiful, and you hoped I'd see you. How could I do anything but love you?" They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set in shades of orange and purple. Grandchildren ran through the yard, their laughter bright in the evening air. Inside, the family was gathering for dinner, multiple generations under one roof, continuing the life Samuel and Olivia had built together. "I'm tired," Olivia said eventually. "Are you ready to go in a minute? Just want to sit here with you a bit longer. We've been sitting here for 30 years, and I still haven't gotten enough." Samuel kissed the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair, flour and vanilla and home. "Hope I never do. You won't. I won't let you." Olivia smiled up at him. "We have years left, Sam. Years of sitting on this swing, watching sunsets, being together. That's all I ever wanted. You beside me, building this life together, watching it grow and change but still being us, still being together. Then you got your wish. Best wish I ever made." They sat a while longer, until the children called them for dinner, until the evening grew too dark to see the prairie. But even then, Samuel was reluctant to go inside, reluctant to leave this sacred space where everything had begun. "Come on," Olivia said, standing and pulling him up with surprising strength. "The family's waiting, and tomorrow evening we'll be right back here. Promise, promise. Every evening for as long as we have." Hand in hand, they walked inside to the warmth and noise of their family. But part of Samuel's heart stayed on that swing, on the porch he'd built with hope and love, on the place where a drifting cowboy had finally found home. Years continued to pass, marked by the rhythms of family and seasons. Samuel and Olivia celebrated 40 years of marriage surrounded by children and grandchildren, the house bursting with love and laughter. They celebrated 50 years more quietly, just the two of them and their oldest friends, many of the people who'd witnessed their wedding long gone now. Samuel's hands shook more with each passing year, arthritis making even simple tasks difficult. But he still maintained the swing, still insisted on keeping it perfect. It was his promise made physical, his love given form, and he'd maintain it until his dying day. Olivia's health remained good longer than Samuel's, but eventually time caught up with her too. Her steps grew slower, her breath shorter. But her mind stayed sharp, her love unwavering. She still baked, though Thomas handled most of the work now. She still read voraciously, borrowing books from the library that had been built in Hillsborough 20 years earlier. She still sat on the swing with Samuel every evening the weather allowed. On a soft October evening in 1928, 50 years after Samuel had first walked into Hillsborough with a bullet wound and no plans to stay, they sat on the swing together. Samuel was 76 now, Olivia 73. Their children had their own children, some of whom had children. The family tree they'd started had sprawled and branched, a legacy of love spreading through generations. "What are you thinking?" Olivia asked, her hand in his. "About that night I met you. How scared you were, looking for your father. How beautiful you looked in the lamplight. How I knew, even then, that you were going to change my life. I was thinking about the first time I saw this swing, how I came out that morning and just cried, because it was so beautiful and so thoughtful, and because I knew what it meant. What did it mean? That you loved me enough to build me a place to rest. That you saw how tired I was, how hard everything had been, and you wanted to give me something good, something gentle, a place to just be." Samuel brought her hand to his lips, kissed her weathered knuckles. "I would build you 1,000 swings if I could. 1,000 houses, 1,000 anythings, just to see you smile. You've given me more than enough. You've given me 50 years of love, 5 beautiful children, more grandchildren than I can count, a life full of joy and purpose and meaning. What more could anyone want? 50 more years with you." Olivia laughed softly. "I don't think we get that, my love, but we've had these 50. That's more than many people ever get." They rocked in silence, listening to the sounds of evening. Hillsborough had grown over the decades, from a rough frontier town to a proper small city. But this corner, their home, remained much as it had always been. The house had been updated, electricity and indoor plumbing added. But the porch, the swing, remained unchanged, a testament to Samuel's craftsmanship and care. "I'm not afraid," Olivia said suddenly. "Of dying, I mean, I'm not afraid." Samuel's throat tightened. "Don't talk about that. We have to sometime. We're old, Sam. We've had a good run, but nothing lasts forever. Some things do. My love for you will last forever. And mine for you. That's what I mean. Death can't touch what we've built. This family, this love, it goes on, through our children and theirs, through every person whose life we've touched. Through this swing you built with your own hands, hoping I'd sit beside you." She turned to look at him, her green eyes still bright despite the years. "We'll last forever, Sam, in all the ways that matter." Samuel pulled her close, holding her as tightly as his old arms allowed. "I love you, Livy. Every day of my life I've loved you. And I love you, my cowboy, my builder of swings and dreams and beautiful lives." They sat until the stars emerged, until their daughter Emma came out to check on them, until the October cold drove them inside. And as they walked, leaning on each other, Samuel looked back at the swing one more time. It had held them for 50 years. It had witnessed proposals and first words and family gatherings. It had been the steady, unchanging center of their ever-changing lives. And it would be there long after they were gone, a reminder that love, once built, endures. Samuel Vance died peacefully in his sleep 3 years later, on a winter morning with snow falling softly outside. He was 79 years old, surrounded by family, his hand held tight in Olivia's. His last words were for her. "Wait for me on the swing. In whatever comes next, I'll find you there." Olivia lived 2 more years, still sharp and determined even as her body failed. She spent her final afternoon on the swing, wrapped in blankets, held by her children, watching the sunset one last time. Her last words echoed her husband's. "I'll wait for you, Sam. On the swing, I'll always wait for you." They were buried side by side in the Hillsborough Cemetery, on the hill overlooking the prairie they'd both loved. Their children maintained the house, kept the bakery running for another generation. The swing remained on the porch, cared for by grandchildren who'd heard the story of how their grandfather built it, hoping their grandmother would sit beside him. And on soft evenings, when the light slants gold across the prairie, and the air holds that particular quiet of dusk, if you sit very still on that old porch swing, some say you can feel them there. The cowboy and his love, still sitting side by side, still holding hands, still watching sunsets together. Still building, in whatever way spirits build, a love that truly lasts forever. The swing itself remained for decades, maintained by generation after generation of Vances. It became a family tradition, a touchstone. Couples got engaged on it, children learned to swing there, grandparents told stories on it. It held joy and sorrow, laughter and tears, the everyday moments that make up a life well lived. Eventually, when the original house was torn down to make way for progress, the swing was carefully dismantled and moved. Thomas's grandson, himself a carpenter, restored it completely, replacing worn wood with new but keeping every piece he could, maintaining the spirit of the original. It hung now on his own porch, 3 generations removed from the hands that built it, still strong, still beautiful, still holding the promise Samuel Vance made all those years ago. Because some things do last forever. Not in the physical sense, perhaps, but in the ways that matter. In stories told and retold. In love that echoes through generations. In the simple act of building something beautiful and hoping someone you love will share it with you. Samuel built a swing on the porch, hoping someday Olivia would sit beside him. She did. And in doing so, they built something far more lasting than wood and chain. They built a legacy of love, a family, a story that would be told long after the last board of that original swing had turned to dust. They built forever, one gentle rock at a time, one sunset at a time, one day of sitting beside each other at a time. And that, perhaps, is the truest kind of forever there is.